First question that's always a low question is this one, mostly because you have to get all of the relationships. And if you don't get all of them, you don't get credit. What describes these angles? Anybody? Vertical, absolutely. They are vertical. What makes them vertical? Describe what vertical looks like. They are also congruent, absolutely. So we've got vertical angles because they're opposite each other in an intersection. They're both acute, which means they're congruent. If one of them is 45 degrees and the other one is 45 degrees, these don't actually look like they're probably 45 degrees. They're probably more like 60 degrees. Not that that is always, right. Adjacent means that they're next to each other. Okay, you've got two things, they share a side. Supplementary means they add up to 180 degrees, and complementary means they add up to 90 degrees. And then a linear pair are adjacent angles that add up to 180 degrees, right? We know that those add up to 180 degrees. Maybe this is 140 and this is 40. That's linear pair. So in this problem, you would have to circle both vertical and congruent, or check them, identify them, however you're going to identify them. Make sure you read that all and get everything. This, again, was your digital notebook, page 16 and 17. So if you did that, you should have been able to reference those pages. Remember, this is an open notes test, so you can always go back to that digital notebook, okay? The next thing was in the digital notebook, we did not do this in class together, so I'm not surprised it was low. On these construction questions, think about what your compass will do, okay? So this question, that answer right there, the compass won't even make this arc down here. If you watch the videos, right, then you'll know that it doesn't even make that mark. And you could have opened the video, looked at it, and then answered the question. That's kind of what I'm expecting you to do. Here, so A is not the right answer. B, we've got arcs on one segment. So if I put another arc over here, I don't have any information on that second segment. So I have no idea whether they're congruent or not, because I'm looking for congruent line segments right there. Let me erase that. Then if you go to question or answer choice number 3, those both look congruent. So I'm going to get there and I'm going to go, that looks like a pretty decent answer. I know congruent line segments have to be exactly the same length, right? So that's kind of the definition. And most of the time with the construction questions, if you just look at the vocabulary, you're going to be able to figure out what the right answer is just based on the vocabulary. And then question or answer choice D, I've got one short segment and one long segment, so that one doesn't even make any sense. If they are congruent, they have to be exactly the same length. Okay, so make sure you watch those videos and try to answer those questions. I will curve the test a little bit because we didn't explicitly talk about these construction questions, but the expectation is that you go look at those videos, okay? The next one, you guys actually did really well with this one. So I think of these as like when you were in elementary school putting stories in order, like you need a beginning, a middle, and an end. So when you're asked to put these together in order, even if you have no idea what the order is, you want to start with the least complete drawing, right? So this is the least complete drawing. It has the least amount of lines. And then you want to get the next least complete drawing. So I'm kind of looking at these two. There's nothing over here on the arc. This one is least complete. So that's going to be 3. Then we're going to put this one, or that's going to be 2. And then this one's going to be 3. And then between these two, oh, this one has a complete angle and this one doesn't have a complete angle. So we're going to put them in order like that. So again, if you're going to put things in order, put them in order from least complete. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 to most complete, right? There are 10 of these constructions that we have to learn for Virginia Department of Education. There are infinite ones and they get kind of cool if you like drawing and that kind of thing. Animators use this kind of stuff all the time, believe it or not. So those were the three lowest questions from part 1. Can you identify the vocabulary word? All of the vocabulary words, and then these 2 construction questions. On the retake, go watch those videos, okay? Use your digital notebook. Lots of you turn that in. Can you see it? Do you have access to it once you've turned it into me, or do I need to unsubmit them? You should be able to find them in your Google Drive. So let me know if you can't access them. Question number 5. All right. So I need somebody or somebodies to unmute themselves. What do we need to mark from the directions? What up here in the directions, what information do we have that's not in the picture?
You can tell us C, D, and EF are perpendicular.
Absolutely. So C, D, and EF are perpendicular. I love the vocabulary word. And perpendicular means they have a right angle, right? This little symbol up here, that upside down capital T, kind of looks like perpendicular lines. And it kind of looks like 2 90-degree angles without the little box. So once we've marked what we need from the directions, and that is a super important step, you cannot skip that step, then what equation can I write if I know they're perpendicular and they equal 90 degrees?
X plus 5 plus 3x minus 7 equals 90.
Beautiful. 3x minus 7 equals 90. So hopefully you're writing this down on your piece of paper that you acquired, right? These notes might be helpful when you go take the retake. It's going to be different questions, but they'll be similar. So then you combine like terms. Remember our algebra, 4x there's our chat. I don't know why it disappears sometimes. 4x, and then we've got to add up our constants. So positive 5 and negative 7 make negative 2 equal 90. So 4x equals 92, and x equals, what's 92 divided by 4? Anybody got that off the tip of their tongue? I got 23. Is that the right answer?
Probably. I have faith in you.
Okay. Thanks, Victoria. I don't always have faith in myself, so I always like to check. The question is, what is x, right? So we're done. This problem, once we figured out that we needed to translate that perpendicular symbol into 90 degrees, we're good. I think there's 2 more here. Let's see. And they did get kind of crazy. So again, what do we need to draw from the directions here? What does that statement look like in a picture? What's complementary mean? How many degrees is complementary? Is that a straight line like this, or is that a 90-degree angle like that? 90-degree angle. So we've got G and we've got H, right? And G and H are going to add up to 90 degrees because complementary means 90 degrees. So our equation is going to be 2x plus 6 plus x. And a lot of people get messed up with that right there. H is x. That's it. Equals 90 degrees, right? A lot of people set these equal to each other because they didn't read the complementary. So if you got this wrong, it is likely that you set them equal to each other. 3x plus 6 equals 90, and then 3x equals 84, I think. And then 84 divided by 3, x equals 28. And because angle H is x, we still, if we substitute it in, we just substitute the 28 in for x, and we get 28. So a lot of people got messed up here because they set these equal to each other. They forgot to read the complementary. And then some people got messed up with that H was just a single x, and that is perfectly okay. Sometimes we make it too easy and then you overthink it. So try not to overthink. Any questions on that one before I go on? I'm trying not to move too fast, but I'm trying to be respectful of your time too. Okay. Next one. What do we need to know from the directions? So we've got some directions. What does that tell us? What does it mean when CM bisects AB? What can I draw into my picture?
It makes two equal parts out of it.
It does. So bisect means to cut in half, right? So where are the two equal parts? If CM is the knife that cuts the string AB in half, what are my two new parts?
AM and MB.
AM. So AM is congruent to MB. And what I'm trying to do here is just make the thinking be tangible, right? So as we're thinking through, sometimes it's hard to figure out what we're supposed to do because the thinking is invisible. So when you go through it, you want to say, okay, what does bisects mean? Bisects means cut in half. Well, what does cut in half mean? It seems like such a simple question, but when you're looking at geometry, it's like, okay, literally, I have AB. It's been cut in half at M. So AM on the left side equals MB on the right side. So now we've got some choices. We need to write an equation, and there are lots of equations that we can write, and they're all correct. So what's one equation we could write knowing that AM and MB are both congruent? They're both half of AB. What's the next step in our thinking? It's like you're detectives. Let me ask a more direct question. If AM is 2x plus 8, what's MB?
2x plus 8.
2x plus 8. Or minus 8, right? Yeah, I said it wrong. If AM is half of AB, how long is AM?
Hmm.
10. And if MB is half of AB, then what's MB? Is it also 10? So we can write a lot of different equations here. You could do 2x minus 8 equals 10, because that's just the half equals the half. You could do the total equals the half plus the half. So you could do 20 equals 2x minus 8 plus 2x minus 8. Some of you like to multiply, so you could do 20 equals 2 times 2x minus 8, right? Any of those equations and all of those equations are going to get the same answer. Okay, I think x equals 9. I like this equation because it's the most simple. 2x equals 18 and x equals 9. So if x equals 9 and we're being asked for x, boom, we're done. Questions on that one? That one does start getting a little complicated because there's so many different ways to think about it. No questions? Okie dokie. Oh, we've got one more. Okay, what do I need to think about here? I'm gonna start calling on people.
Okay, so BC bisects ABD.
Nice.
And BBA is 60 degrees, so you know the other one is also 60 degrees.
So if I go from D to B to A, is that a total or is that a half?
A half. Wait, that's total.
That is the total. Right? So this is why it's important to draw the picture and label it all. So you make sure that you keep everything straight, because it's hard to do that in your head. I love it. So if I know that BC bisects that total angle and the total angle is 60, what's each half?
30.
30. So we've got 30 on the top part and 30 on the bottom part. So from all of that little bit of information and picture, we know that the whole angle from D to B to A is 60. And then we know it's been cut in half. So the top half, D to B to C, is 30, which equals 2x plus 20. These two things equal each other. And then the bottom half is also 30. So the most simple equation to use is 2x plus 20 equals 30. And then you would subtract 20 from both sides, and we get 2x equals 10 and x equals 5. And thank goodness they're asking us for x, right? Nicely done. Thank you. Any other questions on part 2? Part 2 is definitely the hardest. Part 2 is always the hardest because you've had the least amount of time to kind of digest it. And because we're on a 4x4 schedule and we have new stuff every single day, you don't even get one day to kind of process. And that's why it feels like we're going so fast. So I need you guys to give me that feedback. If we get to a place where you're like, whoa, pump the brakes, Miss Doherty, slow the roll, right? You need to tell me that. Now, if you're not getting it done just because it's like a beautiful sunny and 75-degree day out, I can actually go with that because I love beautiful sunny and 75-degree days, but we got to make sure we're getting the work done. Okay. So when you go to take the retake, make sure you read all these directions. If it's got a perpendicular, you've got to translate that onto your picture. If it's got words, whether they're complementary or supplementary, you've got to translate that into a picture. Take the time to illustrate the math problem. It's super important in geometry. If you've got the word bisect, bisect automatically should make you think cut in half. And think about it literally. You've got a piece of string and you're cutting it in half. What are the two new pieces that are equal, right? And that works for both segments and angles, like in page 7 and page 8. Last 2 questions were on part 3. I was super happy with the part 3s. These 2 questions are always tough, A, because they require a lot of reading, and B, because they're just super complicated. Just as a reminder, this chart over here on the right is in your Unit 1 notebook, okay? These notebooks, if we were in real time, you know, face-to-face under normal circumstances, you would get like a literal notebook. And I call this my geometry encyclopedia. And every new chapter would just be a new tab in this, right? We thought it would be overwhelming to give you all of that right up front in digital form. So I would very strongly encourage you to save these notebooks into your Google Drive in a single folder so that you have them all together. So when we get to the part 3s, you have the resources on hand to go look these things up, right? Because not only Unit 2's notebook, but Unit 1's notebook is fair game. So go back and look. We can do the conditional. That's detachment, right? We can turn it around and negate it. That's contrapositive. And then we've got all of those syllogism things where you've got 3 compound sentences. Something can get crossed off. You've got a beginning and an end that are redundant. And then everything gets put back together. So that's what we've got to figure out here. And on the test, the way we have it programmed, you can highlight. So I think you can highlight in pink and blue. I would use that tool. I've got, if a species is a dinosaur, that's P. Then it's extinct, that's Q. Elephants are not extinct, right? So I've got is extinct for Q, and then the very next thing is not extinct. So that's not Q. And then elephants are not dinosaurs. And I've got dinosaurs as P and not dinosaurs here. So that's not, oops, that should be a not P. We'll make it like that. Does that follow one of our patterns over there? One of our valid patterns, or does it follow one of our not valid patterns? Oops. Got a not valid pattern over here. I just can't write on it. Oh, there we go. I think that's a valid pattern. This one is going to be detachment or contrapositive, right? Contrapositive. We start with P and then Q, and then I give you Q, and you give me P. That's a P, by the way. P. If we go look at the next one, we've got someone is a cook. So I'm going to kind of hone in on the word cook. Then they work in the kitchen. So this is P. Then they work in the kitchen. That's going to be Q. Mary is a cook. Cook and cook match. So that's P. Mary works in the kitchen. That's Q. So this is going to be my conditional pattern. And that works too. If we go to the third one, I'm going to change my color because it's getting a little hard to look at. The parallelogram has 4 congruent sides. I think about those words, congruent sides, that's my P. Then it's a rhombus, so that's going to be Q. The parallelogram is a square. That seems like a new thing to me. So I'm going to make the square R. That's just a new set of words, a new clause. Then it has 4 congruent sides. 4 congruent sides was my P. So I've got a P at the beginning and a P at the end that cross out. Then I've got to bring down my hypothesis. So the hypothesis at the beginning of the sentence had a square in it, and the Q at the end of the sentence had a rhombus in it. So I'm predicting in my last sentence, it needs to start with a parallelogram as a square and end with a rhombus. This is syllogism, guys. This is this example right here. It goes PQ, RP. The P's are at the beginning and the end, and they cross out, and I'm left with R to Q. Okay? All we're doing is substituting the P, the Q, and the R in for those like clauses in the sentence. So we've got contrapositive at the beginning. We've got for choice A. We've got the conditional for detachment, which is B. And then we've got syllogism, which is D or C. So I'm thinking that we should be able to get this guy to not work. The animal is a fish. So that's P. Then it lives in water. That's Q. A shrimp lives in water. So I'm honing in on the water. That's what I notice is the same, right? So I'm starting with a Q. So already I'm thinking that this is not going to work, right? This looks like the converse. I've just switched the sentence around. Then the shrimp is a fish, and that's P. So if I give you P to Q, you can't just flip it around. You've got to flip it around and negate it in order to make it work. Okay? This is a lot to think through. It is a lot to think through. Okay, but they don't go away. They keep coming back until we can get this 18% or 19% up to at least 70%. So until 70% of people start getting this right, it's not going to go away on the part 3 of the test. Just fair and good warning. Let's look at the last one. And then I will be done talking for the day, hopefully. If 2 angles are vertical, so again, I got my P's and Q's, so I need to label it. Angles are vertical is P. Then they are congruent. That's Q. Angles D and E, so those are my angles, are not vertical. So I'm back to my R vertical, but I've got a not in there. So this is PQ and then not P. Is that a valid pattern? P to Q to not P. That one's not valid. So inverse and converse, because this would be the inverse. The most often wrong answer would be not Q. People would say that they're not Q. That's not valid. We can't do that. So you've got to choose no valid conclusion. Okay? Don't let the question be smarter than you are. Follow the patterns, not what you think is truth. Okay? And that's the hardest thing for students to grasp and like hold on to in their heads. Resist, resist, resist.